Hi, I'm Wade from Thoroughbred Diesel, and today we're going to be installing a merchant transfer case brace on a ZF6 Duramax. So we have another video on this merchant automotive ZF6 transfer case brace that explains to you all the specifics of it and why you need this on your truck. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a quick little installation video and showing you what you're going to be running into when you're installing this in the truck. So first things first, we had a ZF6 transfer case and transmission out of another Duramax truck here in the shop, so we just wanted to give you a shot of where the bolts were that you're going to be going to on the merchant automotive transfer case brace. Merchant transfer case brace transmission side, there's going to be 4 bolts that come out, and then there's going to be 2 bolts that come out on the transfer case side. So let me show you where those are while we're outside the truck and we've got good shots here. Your 4 transmission bolts that are going to come out of the tail housing are the top 2, and then the 2 beside of it right here. This little, I'm just going to call this a paint hanger or something. This doesn't have any functionality inside of the truck. When you remove it, you can take it off, leave it off. But these 4, and these are 10 metrics on the transmission tail housing. On the transfer case, you're going to be removing the 2 15 metrics at the top of the transfer case. And remember, your transfer case is going to be oriented a little bit, this end of it's going to be oriented a little bit south. That will leave these 2 15 metrics at the very top of the transfer case. If you get confused to which ones they are, your window to access the snap ring in this transfer case, they're directly in line with that. So now that you know where that is, let's go ahead and install our transfer case brace. Just talk through some stuff here that we found when we got underneath the truck. I had a bent cross member. I'm not the original owner of this truck. This is my truck. I'm not the original owner of it. I had a bent cross member, and what that had done is that had pushed the transfer case and the transmission closer to the floorboard. When I went to film the installation portion of the merchant automotive transfer case brace, it would not, I did not have enough room to get the brace between the floorboard and the transmission. So what I had to do there, this just, I wanted to talk through it in case you all run into this. I don't think anybody's going to run into anything that was hit as bad as it was in this truck. If on ZF6 trucks, the transfer case brace or the transmission brace is a different part number than the automatics. I could not find the ZF6 brace. I just could not do it. What I wound up doing is buying an Allison brace, cutting the Allison brace down, using the insert top of the Allison brace, and then that made the height on the transmission correct. So all of this said, you want to make sure that you take that transfer case brace and start it back here like I showed you on how to put it up there and make sure that you've got enough room if your truck's been wrecked or rolled over or some crap like that. So just thinking through it in case you all see that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go for our bolts. I showed you on the transmission and the transfer case where these bolts are. I use, for my 10 metric, I use a long extension bar setup to get to the 4 10 metric bolts on the transmission, and then I just go from the top, and then I'll use a swivel 15 metric on a 3/8 drive to get to my transfer case bolts. So that makes it real easy. You can do all of the bolt removal from the back of the truck. You can do it on the ground, no problem. We've got it up in the air here for the shot. So I'm going to go ahead and go for the bolts on the transmission. Remember, I showed you with the transmission that we had over there on the stand where the location of these bolts are. So we're going to go ahead and remove these 4 10 metric bolts on the ZF6. So I got the 4 transmission bolts out. So now we're going to go to the 2 15 metrics on the back of the transfer case here. So we'll go ahead and remove those. Those are the 2 at the very top of the transfer case, or either side of dead center top as it is oriented on the transmission. There wasn't any difference in the orientation of the bolts on the transmission, so they're all the same length, so you don't have to worry about that. We'll go ahead and pull these 2 bolts out of the transfer case. Okay, now it's time to set our transfer case brace in here. I've got all the bolts out. talk to you just a little bit about the reverse light wires. On the ZF6, you'll have a reverse light wire that'll be on the passenger side of the transmission over here. The wire lays across the top of the transmission. Have a couple guys asked us about this. Do you lay that wiring harness over top of the transfer case brace? You do not. The guys at Merchant Automotive have engineered this to where this bar is high enough to, if you have to take that sensor out or take the wiring harness out, you do not have to remove this. The plug will move underneath of it. So, and then another thing on installing this is you want to start this case brace from the back of the truck. Again, it has notches cut in it. There's fins on the transfer case and the transmission itself that this will orient on, and it will sit just fine. So I always run it from the top here, and then just shimmy it past my wires, being conscious of that. And once it sits in place, it's pretty well there. I'm going to go ahead and start my transfer case bolts in the back, and we're just starting these. We're not going to tighten them, we're just going to start them. It's another just another bolt to help hold this whole thing in place. All right, so we've got both of those started. Now we're going to go for the transmission bolts. Transmission bolts are best started from the outside of it. You can put a piece of toilet paper or something in the socket and run them up there with your socket and extension if you want to. But if you got enough light, which I don't have, should be able to start them from the side. Yeah, that'll be fine. I'm gonna tighten transfer case bolts first. I've got all my bolts in. The 4 bolts on the ZF6, the 2 very, very top ones, they're a little bit challenging to get to. I just basically just fidget them, or just pushed them in there by hand and got them lined up, and then I let my socket and extension kind of go ahead and drive them on home there. But I'm gonna start with my transfer case bolts. I like to tighten these up alternating so that the brace itself is going up equally, and I want to push it towards the transfer case before I start tightening my transfer case bolts. And I won't tighten this all the way down. I'm just going to snug it down like so, and then what I'll do is I'll back it off just a little bit here so it's a little looser. The reason why I'm doing that is I'm trying to set the brace in where I want it, closest to the transmission, and then that way I'm not pulling the brace itself with the bolts at the transmission, because they're smaller. The transfer case bolts are much larger, so they can take a little bit more of a beating. But yeah, so now time to tighten the bolts on the ZF6. You'll probably need a universal for the 10s because the top ones are going to be at an angle that's just a little bit weird to get to. Sorry, Adam. So that gave me, this amount of extensions here gave me enough to get to the bolt. So if you can't get to your other one straight away the way you like it, then I would suggest using a universal or a swivel socket itself. But we're going to go ahead and tighten up the transmission bolts, and then we'll move back to final tightening on the transfer case bolts. So we're going to put our final tightening on our transfer case brace right now from Merchant Automotive. I came back and have done the 2 transfer case 15 metric bolts here, and that's going to be my final tightening. And then the transfer case brace, she is in. And what I want to do here as well, just get them tight. What I want to do here as well is what I'm going to go through here and look for is that the transfer case brace is touching the transmission. And I'll take the camera from Adam right here. Sorry, a little technical difficulties there. What I'm looking for on the brace itself is, I'm going to zoom in here. I want to make sure that the brace is touching the transmission. and it is, so it's pulled all the way up. And then I'll check that same thing on the transfer case, which you can't really see from here, but it's touching there too. So just want to make sure that there's not a gap between the case brace and the transmission or transfer case itself. So looks good there. Awesome. Really nice product from Merchant Automotive. I'm gonna try to get a overall shot there. Well, there's kind of a shot up the tunnel, and then you can kind of see the brace running from the side there. Yeah, there's not a whole lot you can do there. So, all right, I'm gonna hand it back to Adam. We'll close out here. 2 videos in this set. Check and make sure I didn't just hit the stop button there, Adam. Get out the lights. two videos in this set. We had 1 video where we talked about the transfer case brace itself, the technical aspects of it, why you should buy a transfer case brace from Merchant Automotive, and then our installation video, which is this video right here. So we'll link you to the other video in here. It'll be somewhere in there. Jump down in the comments. If you got a ZF6 truck, talk to us about that. This is important. One of these things we talked about in our first video, parts for the ZF6s are getting a little bit scarcer all the time. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we don't crack that rear housing on our transmission from a bad U-joint or something of that nature. This is going to get everything more solid for us, much more gooder. Thank you for watching. If you, we appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe to our channel. We've got so many things we say in these videos anymore, I can't even keep up with it. Thanks for watching.